doing. You only lose energy when life becomes dull in your mind. Your mind gets bored and therefore tired doing nothing. You don't have to be tired. Get interested in something. Get absolutely enthralled in something. Throw yourself into it with abandon. Get out of yourself. Be somebody. Do something. Don't sit around moaning about things, reading the papers, and saying, why don't they do something? The man who is out doing something isn't tired. If you're not getting into good causes, no wonder you're tired. You're disintegrating. You're deteriorating. You're dying on the vine. The more you lose yourself in something bigger than yourself, the more energy you will have. You don't have time to think about yourself and get bogged down in your emotional difficulties. To live with constant energy, it is important to get your emotional faults corrected. You will never have full energy until you do. The late Knute Rockne, one of the greatest football coaches this country ever produced, said that a football player cannot have sufficient energy unless his emotions are under spiritual control. In fact, he went so far as to say that he would not have a man on his team who did not have a genuinely friendly feeling for every fellow player. I have to get the most energy out of a man, he said, and have discovered that it cannot be done if he hates another man. Hate blocks his energy and he isn't up to par until he eliminates it and develops a friendly feeling. People who lack energy are disorganized to one degree or another by their deep, fundamental emotional and psychological conflicts. Sometimes the results of this disorganization are extreme, but healing is ever possible. In a Midwestern city, I was asked to talk with a man, formerly a very active citizen of that community, who had suffered an acute decline in vitality. It was thought by his associates that he had had a stroke. This impression was given by the shuffling manner in which he moved, by an extraordinary lethargic attitude, and by his complete detachment of himself from the activities to which he had formerly given a large portion of his time. He sat despondently in his chair hour after hour, and often he would weep. He exhibited many of the symptoms of a nervous breakdown. I arranged to see him in my hotel room at a certain hour. My door was open and through it I could see the elevator. I chanced to be looking in that direction when the elevator door opened and this man came shuffling down the hall. It seemed that at any moment he would topple over, and he gave every evidence of scarcely being able to negotiate the distance. I asked him to be seated and engaged him in conversation, which conversation was rather fruitless, for it revealed little enlightenment because of his tendency to complain about his condition and his inability to give thoughtful consideration to my questions. This was apparently due to his enormous self-pity. When I asked him if he would like to be well, he looked up at me in the most intense and pathetic manner. His desperation was revealed by his answer, which was that he would give anything in the world if he could regain the energy and the interest in life which he formerly enjoyed. I began to draw out of him certain facts regarding his life and experience. These were all of a very intimate nature and many of them so deeply embedded in his consciousness that it was with the utmost difficulty that his personality yielded them up. They had to do with old infantile attitudes, fears that stemmed from earliest days, most of them deriving from the mother-child relationship. Not a few guilt situations appeared. It seemed that over the course of the years these factors had accumulated like drifting sand across the channel of a river. The flow of power was gradually decreased so that an insufficient amount of energy was passing through. The man's mind was in such a complete state of retreating that a process of reasoning and enlightenment seemed quite impossible. I sought for guidance and found myself, quite to my surprise, standing beside him and placing my hand upon his head. I prayed, asking God to heal the man. I suddenly became aware of what seemed to be the passing of power through my hand which rested upon his head. I hasten to add that there is no healing power in my hand, but now and then a human being is used as a channel. And it was evidently so in this instance, for presently the man looked up with an expression of the utmost happiness and peace. And he said simply, "He was here. He touched me. I feel entirely different." From this time on his improvement was pronounced, and at the present time he is practically his old self again, except for the fact that he now possesses a quiet and serene confidence which was not present previously. Apparently the clogged channel in his personality through which the passage of power had been impeded was opened by an act of faith, and the free flow of energy was renewed. The facts suggested by this incident are that such healings do take place and that a gradual accumulation of psychological factors can cut off the flow of energy. The further fact is stressed that these same factors are susceptible to the power of faith to energy within an individual. The effect of guilt and fear feelings on energy is widely recognized by all authorities having to do with the problems of human nature. The quantity of vital force required to give the personality relief from either guilt or fear or a combination of each is so great that often only a fraction of energy remains for the discharge of the functions of living. Energy drainage occasioned by fear and guilt is of such an amount as to leave little power to be applied to a person's job. The result is that he tires quickly, not being able to meet the full requirements of his responsibility. He retreats into an apathetic, dull, listless condition and is indeed even ready to give up and fall back sleepily in a state of enervation. A businessman was referred to me by a psychiatrist whom the patient had been consulting. It appeared that the patient, generally regarded as quite morally strict and upright, had become involved with a married woman. He had attempted to break off this relationship but was encountering resistance from his partner in infidelity, although he had earnestly besought her to abandon their practice and allow him to return to his former state of respectability. She had threatened him with the possibility that she might enlighten her husband concerning these escapades if he insisted in his desire to cease the relationship. The patient recognized the fact that if the husband became apprised of the situation, it would result in disgrace for him in his community. He happened to be a prominent citizen and prized his high standing. As a result of his fear of exposure and a sense of guilt, he had been unable to sleep or rest. And since this had gone on for 2 or 3 months, he was in a very serious slump in energy and did not possess the vitality to perform his job efficiently. Inasmuch as some important matters were pending, the situation was serious. When the psychiatrist suggested that he see me, a clergyman, because of his inability to sleep, he remonstrated by saying there was no way in which a clergyman could correct the condition which caused his sleeplessness, but, on the contrary, he felt that a medical doctor might supply effective medication. When he stated his attitude to me, I simply asked him how he expected to sleep when he had 2 very annoying and unpleasant bedfellows with whom he was attempting to sleep. Bed fellows? He asked in surprise. I have no bed fellows. Oh, yes. You have, I said, and there is nobody in this world who can sleep With those two, one on either side. What do you mean? He asked. I said, you are trying to sleep every night between fear on one side and guilt on the other, and you are attempting an impossible feat. It makes no difference how many sleeping pills you take, and you admit you have taken many such pills, but they have had no effect upon you. The reason they do not affect you is that they cannot reach the deeper levels of your mind where this sleeplessness originates and which is siphoning off your energy. You must eradicate fear and guilt before you will ever be able to sleep and regain your strength. We dealt with the fear which was of exposure by the simple expedient of getting him ready in mind to face whatever might ensue as a result of doing the right thing, which was of course to break off the relationship regardless of consequences. I assured him that whatever he did that was right would turn out right. 1 never does wrong by doing right. I urged him to put the matter in God's hands and simply do the right thing, leaving the outcome to God. He did that, not without trepidation, but with considerable sincerity just the same. The woman, either through shrewdness or some expression of her own better nature or through the more doubtful expedient of transferring her affections elsewhere, released him. The guilt was handled by seeking God's forgiveness. When this is sincerely sought, it is never denied, and our patient found surcease and relief. It was astonishing how when this double weight was lifted from his mind, his personality once again began to function normally. He was able to sleep. He found peace and renewal of strength. Energy quickly returned. A wiser and thankful man, he became able to carry on his normal activities. A not infrequent case of diminishing energy is staleness. The pressure, monotony, and unceasing continuity of responsibilities dull the freshness of mind which a person must have to approach his work successfully. As an athlete goes stale, so does the individual, whatever his occupation, tend to come upon dry and arid periods. During such a condition of mind, the expenditure of greater energy is required to do with difficulty what one formerly did with comparative ease. As a result, the vital powers are hard put to it to supply the force required, and the individual often loses his grip and power. A solution for this state of mind was employed by a prominent business leader, president of the board of trustees of a certain university. A professor who had formerly been outstanding and extraordinarily popular had begun to slip in teaching ability and in the power to interest students. It was the verdict of the students as well as the private opinion of the trustees that this teacher must either recover his former capacity to teach with interest and enthusiasm, or it would be necessary to replace him. This latter expedient was entertained with hesitancy for the reason that there still remained a normal expectancy of several active years before he reached the age of retirement. The businessman above referred to asked the professor to come to his office and announce to him that the board of trustees was giving him a 6 months leave of absence with all expenses paid and with full salary. There was only one stipulation, and that was that he go away to a place of rest and give himself over to gaining a complete renewal of strength and energy. The businessman invited him to use a cabin which he himself owned in a wilderness setting, and made the curious suggestion that he take no books except one book, the Bible. He suggested that the professor's daily program be walking, fishing, and some manual work in the garden, that he read the Bible every day for such a period as would enable him to read the book through 3 times in the 6 months. He further suggested that he memorize as many passages as possible for the purpose of saturating his mind with the great words and ideas which the book contains. The Businessman said, I believe that if you spend 6 months outdoors chopping wood, digging in the soil, reading the Bible, and fishing in the deep lakes, you will become a new man. The professor agreed to this unique proposal. His adjustment to this radically different mode of life was an easier one than he or anyone who knew him expected. In fact, he was surprised to find that he actually liked it. After he became conditioned to active outdoor living, he discovered that it had an immense appeal for him. He missed his intellectual associates and his reading for a while, but forced back upon the Bible, his only book. He became immersed in it, and to his amazement found, as he put it, a library within itself. In its pages he found faith and peace and power. In 6 months he was a new man. The businessman now tells me that this professor has become, as he puts it, a person of compelling power. Staleness passed away, the old-time energy returned, power surged back. Zest for living was renewed.